If you're over 40 and you've noticed your brain isn't as sharp as it used to be, stop what you're doing and listen to this. What your doctor's telling you about normal aging is dead wrong. You know, I had a Fortune 500 CEO come to me recently, and the problem is he couldn't remember his own presentation mid-sentence. His team noticed, his board noticed, and he thought his career was over at 47. But here's what's really happening. Your brain fog, those slower mental responses, that 3 p.m. crash where you can't think straight, these aren't inevitable signs of aging after 40. They're actually symptoms of a biochemical deficiency that's completely reversible. And in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly why your brain is struggling and what it actually needs to thrive, and the specific protocols I use with executives earning over $200,000 a year to maintain peak mental performance decades longer than their peers. I'm Dr. Desmond Ebanks, and I specialize in longevity medicine for high-performing executives, founders, and entrepreneurs. And what I've discovered after testing over 1,000 professionals over age 40 is that the difference between those who maintain their mental edge and those who decline isn't genetics or luck. It's understanding the 4 interconnected systems that control your cognitive function. And once you understand this, you'll realize why everything you've been told about brain health is fundamentally flawed. So let me start with something that might shock you. Your brain is 60% fat. Not the kind your cardiologist warned you about, but highly specific lipids or fats that form the foundational building blocks for memory, for clarity, and for cognitive performance. Now think about this for a second. We've been told for decades to go low-fat everything, and yet your brain, the organ that makes you who you are, is primarily made of fat. And not just any fat, but very specific classes of lipids that most of us have never heard of. These phospholipids, they're the flexible, self-repairing outer layer of every cell in your nervous system. They act as gatekeepers, regulating what enters and exits every neuron in your brain. Think of them as a dynamic scaffold that allows proteins and other lipids to drift, allowing cells to reshape, and is critical for learning and nerve function. But here's where it gets really interesting. Within this category of phospholipids, there are specific types called phosphatidylcholine and phosphatidylserine, which are abundant in the myelin sheath. That's the insulation around your neurons that ensures rapid transmission of electrical signals. Phosphatidylcholine provides choline to make the neurotransmitter acetylcholine for memory, and phosphatidylserine helps maintain membrane fluidity. And then there's a specialized subfamily, phospholipids, that you've probably never heard of, those plasmalogens. These have a spring-like structure, and they act like flexible shock absorbers, allowing cells in your brain and fast-moving cells in your heart to bend without cracking their membranes. They're also one of the first-line antioxidants that protect your DNA and proteins from free radical damage. Now, here's the kicker, and this is what your regular doctor isn't telling you. These critical lipids naturally decline with age. As we age, these flexible fats like DHA and plasmalogens decline approximately 1% per year after age 40. That makes membranes more rigid and potentially prone to damage. And that brain fog you're experiencing, those slower mental responses after 40, that's not normal aging, that's plasmalogen deficiency. And when you have depletion of these powerful lipids, it impacts mitochondrial function. When you impact mitochondrial function, that leads to reduced energy production in the form of ATP, and that results in mental fatigue that is actually biochemical, not psychological. You're not getting old, you're not stressed out, well, maybe you are, but in this case, your brain cells are literally running out of fuel. Now, this next part is going to fundamentally change how you think about cognitive decline. Alzheimer's disease is increasingly being referred to as type 3 diabetes. Let that sink in for a moment. Type 3 diabetes of the brain. You see, when you have impaired glucose management in that microenvironment in the brain, it leads to inflammation. And inflammation, this is really critical to understand. Inflammation is the root of all chronic diseases. It's the underlying issue in heart disease, obesity, type 2 diabetes, and cognitive decline. These are all interconnected. I see this pattern constantly in my practice with executives and other high performers. You come in thinking these are separate issues, your weight gain, your energy crashes, your brain fog, but they're all part of the same metabolic cascade. Each one adversely impacts the other, and all the things that make any of those better can make all of them better. Think about it this way. Regular exercise increases blood flow and increases oxygen delivery. It's been studied and documented that physically active people don't have the same cognitive decline as people who are sedentary. Same with diet. Excess carbohydrates leads to insulin resistance, which creates inflammation in the brain, ultimately. And here's something that should really concern you if you're carrying extra weight around the midsection. Visceral fat, that belly fat that's inside surrounding internal organs that's so hard to lose after 40, is directly linked to faster cognitive decline. It's not just about brain health is inseparable from overall metabolic health. And this is where most doctors get it wrong. They treat symptoms in isolation, but it's actually a complex interplay with 4 key systems. And when one falters, the entire system is affected, creating what I call a loop of decline. Let me break this down for you because understanding this is absolutely critical. First, you have membrane function, the gatekeeper of cellular health. This ensures proper nutrient exchange and proper signaling. When your membranes aren't functioning properly, nothing else can work right. Second is muscle health. Now, you may be thinking, what do muscles have to do with my brain? Well, muscle muscles are the metabolic engine that influences glucose regulation and insulin sensitivity, and by extension, mitochondrial growth in size and number. Weak muscles mean poor glucose control, which means brain inflammation. Third is mitochondrial function itself. These are the powerhouses that produce ATP, all cellular processes, including brain activity. Energy production generates oxidative stress in the form of free radicals. Mitochondria are also tasked to neutralize those free radicals. So when your mitochondria aren't working properly, you literally don't have the energy to think clearly. And fourth, methyltransferase system, which is a metabolic regulator that controls gene expression, neurotransmitter balance, and detoxification. This is what determines whether your genes express health or express disease. Here's an example of how this cascade works. Damaged membranes lead to mitochondrial stress, which impacts muscle performance, which then affects glucose regulation. And then you have this loop of continual decline. It's like dominoes falling, except each domino that falls makes the next one fall faster. Most executives I work with come to me thinking they need to work on one thing, maybe their energy or their focus. But when we test all four systems, we always find multiple points of breakdown. And here's the good news. When you address all four systems simultaneously, the improvement is exponential, not linear. If you're thinking this sounds complex, you're right. That's exactly why I've developed comprehensive testing protocols that measure all four of these systems simultaneously. If you want to learn more about how we can optimize your cognitive function and extend your peak performance years, visit my website or book a consultation through the link in the description below. But before you even think about testing, let me show you the specific interventions that can start reversing the decline almost immediately. So everyone's heard the conventional advice, right? Get enough sleep, regular exercise, avoid smoking, limit alcohol, and consume a healthy, low glycemic diet. All of that is crucial for general brain health. But for high performance individuals and executives who need to maintain their edge, I want to give you specific data-driven solutions that can optimize brain health and cognitive function, particularly after 40. First, let's talk about targeted dietary enhancement. And this is going to be contrary to what many conventional recommendations tell you. You want to prioritize egg yolks. Yes, the yolks that everyone's been throwing away, which are rich in phosphatidylcholine, sunflower seeds, fatty fish, and organ meats. These are all excellent sources. But here's the reality, and this is what I tell all my executive and other high-performance clients. Diet alone is not enough to provide adequate phospholipids, particularly plasmalogens. In a typical diet, you get less than 10 milligrams a day of plasmalogens, but you really need to be supplementing with 200 to 400 milligrams or more, depending on where you're starting from. There have been randomized placebo-controlled trials showing modest improvements, 200 to 400 milligrams of phosphatidylserine daily over 8 to 12 weeks. But for that specialized subcategory, plasmalogens, supplementation is really the only way to get sufficient amounts. And when you do this, when you actually restore these critical lipids, the benefits are remarkable. Enhanced membrane fluidity, improved mitochondrial efficiency, lower inflammatory markers. My clients report clearer thinking, better memory, and that mental energy lasting throughout the day instead of crashing at 3 p.m. You also want to support mitochondrial function with B vitamins and forms of coenzyme Q10 to nourish mitochondria and counteract stress, which can impair plasmalogen production. Stress can be caused by sleep deprivation, exposure to toxins, and a variety of other factors that are unfortunately common in high-pressure executive roles. Ketones can be controversial, particularly if you're looking at a very low-carb ketogenic diet, which in actuality is very difficult for most people to maintain. We're talking about fewer than 20 grams of carbs a day, and there are a lot of people who think they're on a ketogenic diet, but actually never truly get into ketosis. But here's what's fascinating. There have been studies looking at exogenous ketones, proven to be nearly as effective as following a strict ketogenic diet. And when you deliver ketones to your brain, it's actually a cleaner burning alternative fuel that can help improve mitochondrial efficiency. Think of it this way. Your brain typically runs on glucose, like a car running on regular gasoline. But ketones are like premium fuel. They burn cleaner, they produce less waste, and actually protect your engine. They increase delivery of certain fatty acids, particularly DHA, across the blood-brain barrier and help protect membrane lipids, including plasmalogens, by reducing lipid breakdown. You don't need to follow an extreme ketogenic diet. The strategic use of high-quality exogenous ketones can give you the cognitive benefits without the lifestyle restrictions. Many of my executive clients use them before important meetings or during intensive work periods, and the mental clarity difference is remarkable. Now, the second category of intervention is testing beyond a basic cholesterol panel. You need what I call a molecular microscope to actually measure plasmalogens to see where you are and help guide how much you need to supplement. Most doctors are still using 20th century tests to diagnose 21st century problems. You can't optimize what you don't measure. And when we actually measure plasmalogen levels in founders and other high-performance individuals, we often find they're at 30 to 40% of optimal levels. So it's no wonder they're experiencing brain fog and mental fatigue. There are also peptides in the category of bioregulators that are showing remarkable results. C-Lank, which is more anti-inflammatory and settles the brain. It can reduce anxiety and help you get into a better sleep pattern. C-Max is a nootropic, which improves brain function. It's like turning on the turbo switch. There are also mitochondrial-derived peptides that enhance mitochondrial function and confer numerous benefits. MOTS-C improves insulin sensitivity and enhances physical performance. Humanin exhibits potent neuroprotection, and SS31 restores ATP production by improving electron transport efficiency. And I'd be remiss not to mention the now almost ubiquitous GLP-1 agonists like Ozempic, Wegovy. Although initially developed for type 2 diabetes and now famous for weight loss, they've been shown to be beneficial for nearly every organ system in the body. There's preliminary data showing they're beneficial for brain health and reducing cognitive decline. There's even a current ongoing study looking at using Ozempic to treat Alzheimer's disease. Here's what we've covered today. Your cognitive decline after 40 isn't inevitable aging. It's plasmalogen deficiency, mitochondrial dysfunction, and a forced system breakdown that can be interrupted and reversed. The tools to do this, from targeted supplementation to advanced testing to metabolic optimization, are available right now. But here's what's really critical to understand. Recent research shows that brain aging follows distinct transition points at ages 44, 67, and 90. So if you're in your 40s or 50s, you're at the first critical transition point. The interventions you implement now don't just slow decline, they can actually reverse it and set you up for decades of peak cognitive performance. The question isn't whether cognitive decline is reversible. You know it is. The question is whether you'll take action before you hit that next transition point. Because while your competitors are accepting normal aging, you could be optimizing your biological age and maintaining your edge for decades longer. If you value longevity and peak performance as highly as your business success, be sure to subscribe.